Well, hi, Kute Blackson. I'm so excited to have you today on the Seeking Sunshine podcast. How are you?
It's good to be here. Thank you. Really well.
Well, I'm super excited to get to know you and to hear your story. I know that it is so amazing and so fascinating. So let's dive right in and start wherever you feel like is the most relevant. And I know it goes really, really deep.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's see. I do know some of your story because you are kind of amazing, and I've heard you speak a few times,
Oh,
and
wow.
but I know that a lot of my audience probably hasn't heard from you before.
Sure, sure. Look, I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana, my mother's Japanese. Um, I grew up in London, so I feel like I'm from everywhere and nowhere, a citizen of the world. But how I got started in the field of personal growth and transformation and spirituality was, some would say I had a bit of an unusual childhood. For me, I felt my childhood was quite normal, and I didn't think it was that special, to be honest.
We
Um,
only know what we know, right?
yeah, it's all I knew. But from a very young age, I was a very empathetic kid, so I would feel, I felt people's pain very deeply. And there was a part of me that always wanted to alleviate suffering in some way. I just didn't know how to do that. I didn't know what that would look like. But I remember being around age 6, age 7, being lost in a crowd of, a few thousand people in Ghana, West Africa, and seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the gravel, the sand that this man walked on, wiped it on her face, and stood up. You could call this a miracle. And so week after week, I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear, and people stand up out of wheelchairs. The same man whose gravel she picked up would look at a woman in a wheelchair and say, why are you in this wheelchair? Stand up. You're not sick. And he would look at somebody who would come in with crutches and say, why do you have crutches? Throw your crutches away, walk. And so I grew up around many miracles, and I just didn't think anything of it because it's all I knew. And I saw these things with my own eyes right there behind the scenes, not on camera. Sometimes people would say, well, was it real? Was it a scam? It's like, well, I saw it every day. This man was my father. And so he
What
built
was it like
300 churches
growing
in,
up in that
yeah,
shadow?
yeah, he built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa. He built a huge church in London, hundreds of thousands of followers at his height in Ghana, 4 or 5 thousand people every Sunday in London. And so when I was age 8, you could say my speaking career began because that's when I was thrown into the audience and my father said, speak. And when I was about 14, I was ordained as a minister, and I was actually given the mandate to take over my father's church as his successor. And for me, I kind of knew that this was not my path. I kind of knew that this was not my destiny. I was just a bit, I think, like many of us, I allowed fear to hijack me. I was a bit afraid of speaking my truth. My fear was if I dare to be who I am, if I dare to speak my truth, then I'm going to lose my father and I'm going to be outcast. I'm going to be alone. And so I said nothing. And for 4 years, I really tried to fit myself into a box to become who I thought the world wanted me to be, who I thought my father wanted me to be. Um,
And you
and
know,
I
that's
became
really
miserable in the process. And
that's kind of
so,
a that's a kind of a universal story,
yeah,
isn't it? Of like,
yeah,
parents are powerful figures in our lives. And we grow up going, okay, what do they want from us? How do we please them? And you
yes,
grew up with such a powerful figure as a
sure,
father.
sure,
And not just powerful for you, which is what most people grow up with, but he was
yeah,
powerful for everybody around him.
sure, sure. He was a very influential man in many ways, and so it took me about 4 years to muster up the courage because at the age of 18, I felt a calling I had to make some decisions, and I felt a calling, like something in my soul called me to come to America. I wanted to go into the field of personal growth. I wanted to go into the field of self-help. I wanted to write books because I would sneak into my father's office, and in his office, he had 1,000 books on spirituality and personal growth, and everyone from Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra. So I would read all of these books, and many of these folks lived in Southern California. And so I thought, this is the Mecca. This is where I want to come and meet these people and learn from some of these folks. And so as a kid, when I turned 18, my soul guided me, said, go to America. And, sometimes I think what your soul guides you to do doesn't always make sense to your logic, doesn't always make sense to your mind, isn't always convenient or comfortable. But I think what I have found is when you listen to your soul and you listen to that inner guidance without compromise, you'll always be guided in the right direction with the right people at the right time, even though the road and the route that you take may not be the one that you most expect. And so I said yes. And that's when I knew what I had to do, which was leave everything I knew behind. I renounced everything. I had the conversation with my father. I looked into my future, basically, and I saw that I could take over my father's church. I could be successful by the world standards, living someone else's life. But if I didn't have myself, if I didn't have my soul, if I didn't have my own truth, if I didn't have my integrity, like what kind of success is that? And so that's when I knew I had to leave everything. And I had I had a very difficult conversation with my father. We did not speak for 2 years. And it was very devastating for me as a young man. But I felt guided, and I felt like I didn't have a choice. And that's when I ended up winning a green card in the green card lottery, literally, and came to the US with 2 suitcases, maybe $800 to $1,000 in my pocket, and just showed up in LA and began following a dream. And I've been following my soul ever since. And I, went and found mentors and teachers and many of the authors, and then ended up going to India. And it was spending time I actually went to Israel and then walked the Camino, then ended up in India. But it was my time in India that really cracked me open to another level and dimension of understanding who I am and my purpose in life. And that's when I caught a vision for what I was here to do. And I came back as a young man to LA and began working with people. This is 20 years ago, working with people one-on-one before coaching was popular. And one person's life changed, another person's life changed. I created a whole new way of working with people, and people started coming from around the world, and it just mushroomed and grew into small groups, larger groups, larger groups, and then here we are.
Amazing. It's amazing how you transformed, being you must have been such a scared little kid going, how do I break free of this when it seems like there's this overwhelming, force surrounding me that I just can't escape from. So I'd love to go back to that moment
Mm-hmm.
of, when you're, 12 years old, 14 years old, going,
14.
realizing that this isn't what I want in my
Yes.
life. This is
Yes.
not the direction that I feel in my soul is
Mm-hmm.
right for me, but you're still going to be stuck there for another few years
Yeah.
before you can really break free. So how did you find, the sunshine while you were still there, while you were still
I don't know if I found the sunshine. I was terrified. I think for 4 years I tried to convince myself that maybe this was the path. I tried to mold myself and fit myself into the idea of what I thought people wanted me to be and my father wanted me to be. But in the process of that, I was becoming more miserable, more unhappy, more depressed, and just something didn't feel right. Something didn't sit right. And I felt so much pain inside that I was denying, and so I can't say I felt the sunshine. In fact, I felt a tremendous amount of grief during those 4 years and tremendous amount of heartbreak because I had to begin making, and it took me 4 years of begin making peace with the loss of the life I knew, with the loss of the relationship that I wanted to have with my father because I knew this would have an impact. And so 4 years of grieving and 4 years of tears and 4 years of heartbreak and the feeling of I'm going to break my father's heart, but also I'm going to lose the connection with my father. And so 4 years of just making peace. And when I had that conversation with my father, I was still terrified before the conversation, during the conversation, and after the conversation. And
sometimes
but
I
I
feel like
but
after's worse.
yeah, but I felt something was guiding me and something was nudging me and there was something bigger than me. And I think if anything, I just decided to follow that. I decided because what I realized was if I lie to myself now at that moment to get love, validation, and approval, I'm going to have to lie to myself for the rest of my life. I'm going to have to tell myself this lie for the rest of my life. And that would be more painful than anything else, to have to lie to myself for the rest of my life and lie to everyone else. And so that was the pain of that, the pain of self-betrayal is something I felt very deeply. And so I think if people are wondering, perhaps, how can they begin transforming their lives? Where do they start? What's a step that they can take? One thing I learned throughout my life over and over again is I think one of the things that keeps us stuck as human beings, keeps us blocked as human beings, keeps us from manifesting and elevating and from being fulfilled and happy are really all the ways that we lie to ourselves. In so many ways, sometimes it's not even intentional. We lie to ourselves about who we are, about what we want, about how we feel. We stay in relationships that we know are not right. We work jobs that we hate. We betray ourselves to get love, validation, and approval so that people will like us. And we wonder why we feel pain. And I think pain, in many ways, is a gift. It's a blessing. It's feedback. Pain is feedback showing us that we are not living in alignment. But in our culture today, we're not taught how to navigate and deal with the pain. You feel pain? Oh, drink it away, sex it away, smoke it away, shop it away, social media it away, just kind of like anesthetize it away so that we suppress the pain. But the pain, when we lie to ourselves, when we're not in integrity, when we're not listening to our souls, eventually pain is the feedback trying to get our attention to show us that we're not living in alignment. And so I think if we're willing to acknowledge the pain, see pain as a blessing, see pain as feedback, see pain as communication, and really understand the message that the pain is giving us. Like when we lie to ourselves, it's meant to be painful. It's not meant to feel good, And so when we lie to ourselves, for me, in many ways, it can manifest as emotional depression. I felt a bit depressed. I felt unhappy. Sometimes it's kind of a low grade. We don't feel energized. We don't feel joy. We don't feel aliveness. Maybe it manifests as a physical ailment, like a backache that's temporary, a shoulder ache, where your unconscious is speaking to you, or even an ongoing dis-ease in some way, where your body manifests a disease because your unconscious again is speaking to you, trying to communicate and get your attention. And so I really think that we have to begin with the willingness to tell ourselves the truth. And so I would invite each person to ask themselves, what lies am I telling myself? Which takes courage. What lies am I? We stay in relationships that we know it's not right. We work jobs that we hate and we know it's not truly aligned. And of course we feel pain. And so if we can just start with, okay, what lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? And I tell people sometimes it's just about taking the pressure off of yourself of having to take any action, because sometimes the fear of the consequence of what will happen if I tell the truth kind of blocks us from really getting in touch with the truth as a self-protection mechanism. So we play this game of, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm confused, when deep down we know. There's a part of us that knows everything. So if we can take the pressure off of ourselves of having to take action and just start with the truth. I hate my job. The truth. I'm not in love. The truth. I have an alcohol problem. Whatever the truth is, without having to take action. So you don't have to break up. You don't have to divorce. You don't have to leave your job, but just begin with the truth. You cannot shift and change something if you're not in touch with the reality of where you are now. And I think when we can just start with the truth, that begins a process inside that allows certain feelings to come up that gives you the opportunity to deal with them.
That is spot on. That is beautiful. And I totally agree. When you're out of integrity, you can feel it. You can just feel it. And the problem with our culture and our society today is that we go, and then you can't feel it because we're always running on autopilot, and you can't feel it until you slow down for just a moment. That's why meditation is so essential and so beautiful. And you don't even, if you hate meditation, like just stop, do breath work, do something, stop for a moment, because that's when you can feel it. That's when you can feel that you're out of alignment. That's when you can start feeling it. Because if you don't start by feeling it, then it turns into the physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
But if you give it a moment, like you'll know, and you can just tell. And then it's like, people talk about selfishness so much as this terrible thing, but it's actually the most beautiful gift that you can give the world, is to be so selfish, because then you are the best human to everyone else around you, is when you give them the gift of you being completely aligned. I love it. Anyway, so that moment when you just knew it, and I think that there was a beauty in there that you missed, where you were reading those books and you were growing and you were searching for something in those books to find a way to escape from that pressure and that pain. And you found it, and then you went and searched for it when you had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And you found those people, and you grew from those. And there's so much sunshine there that it makes me want to burst, because it's like you were just being bogged down in all this pain, and yet there was this glimmer there that you took
Mm-hmm.
with you for the rest of your life,
Mm-hmm.
as you grew from these words in your father's library that he didn't even know he was teaching you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know
Yep, absolutely.
and so after that, you had this big falling out with your father, and that had to be one of the hardest things you've ever done, right?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it was difficult. It was challenging. It was not easy. But I really believe when you follow your soul, you're always being guided. You know.
But I feel like the moments that led up to that, you had, well, and it wasn't just moments, it was years where you were
Mm-hmm.
like, the pain built up to the point where you were like, this is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be worth breaking this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it's going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though your relationship fractured, did it eventually mend?
Yeah, my relationship with my father, we eventually healed and came together and forgave him and all of that good stuff. So we came to a good place, which took years of healing. But we got there in the end, you know. I think that in so many ways we betray ourselves to get love, validation, and approval for others. And as I said, when you do that, not only do you hate yourself or lose respect for yourself and lose trust for yourself, but when you become who you think you need to be to get someone's love and validation and approval, when they actually love you, deep down, you will not be able to receive that love, and you will not feel that love as authentic, because you know that the version of yourself that they're loving is not the real version of yourself. And so when they're loving the fake version of yourself that you are pretending to be, with good intention to get love, validation, approval, that they're not loving the real version of you, so that the love that they give you isn't real. So you're not even able to really let it in. And I tell people, number one, what good is it to gain the world and the approval of the world if you don't have your own approval, if you don't love yourself? In life, you have two things. You have reputation, you have character. Reputation is what other people think about you, other people's perceptions about you, which really you don't have that much control over. And trying to control how other people think about you takes so much time, energy, stress, leads to anxiety, because we don't have control over what other people think. If you go into a room, there's 100 people, likely you're going to have 100 opinions. It's just the fact. You're going to have 100 reputations. And so what other people think about you also reveals more about them than it does about you, because people are really projecting onto you through the lens of their ego, through the lens of their conditioning, through the lens of their own childhood, through the lens of their own pain, traumas, successes, failures, their own consciousness. They're projecting onto you. So they're not necessarily seeing you, they're seeing through the lens of their own projection. And so it reveals more about them than it does about you. And so I think you have reputation, other people's perceptions and opinions. But at the end of the day, when you are alone, when you are with yourself in the middle of the night and you wake up and you look in the mirror and everything is quiet and you look at yourself, how do you feel? Can you respect yourself? Are you at peace with yourself? Because in that moment, all you have with you and within yourself is your own character. And your own character is how you feel about yourself. And if you can't be at peace with yourself, if you can't be comfortable in your own heart, soul, in your own skin, with your own inner integrity and alignment, doesn't matter if the world loves you and what your reputation is, because peace comes from knowing who you are and who you're not, and being at peace with that. And so for me, this is something I had to pursue within myself. This is something I kind of endeavored to follow, and so we spend so much time in our culture worrying about what other people think, trying to please other people, trying to get other people to love us. But I think this just creates more suffering, more stress, more anxiety, and a lack of internal, shall we say, self-trust and self-love. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just saying this the other day that like if I could change one like limiting belief about, in the entire world, it would be that self-worth piece, because I genuinely believe that that is the underlying problem of like 99.9% of all the problems in the world, is that
Mm-hmm.
people just don't actually feel their own self-worth. They don't really
Mm-hmm.
believe that they're lovable. And
Mm-hmm.
we cannot control how other
Mm-hmm.
people feel. We can't, like, we try so hard to make other people feel, you know, everything. We try to make other people happy, and we try to do all these things, and it never works. And
Yeah.
yet
The belief around self-worth is a sneaky one. And I think I want to sort of bust that for people, because often, sometimes intellectually, we know that it's not true, but we're not able to let go of the belief of like, I'm unworthy, even though we know it's not really true, but we kind of like don't let go of it. And so for me, I work with so many clients in helping them shift and transform and heal. And one thing I saw as to like, why is it sometimes so hard to let go of this innate feeling, belief of I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable? Why is it so difficult sometimes to let it go, even when you know that it's not really true? And look, as children, certain things may have happened or may have not happened in terms of how our parents treated us, how they showed up, how they didn't show up. And so as a result, we made an interpretation of reality. We made up a story as to what that meant. It means I'm not enough. It means I'm not enough. It means I'm not lovable. It means I'm unworthy because they left. And so two things. We have to be willing to question the belief. Like, I had a client whose mother left her with her dad at the age of 8. She made that mean I'm not enough, and she kind of sought out experiences in her life in relationships with men to prove that, see, I'm not enough, because she kept unconsciously choosing men that would not commit to her, men that would cheat, men that would not be trustworthy, men that didn't want to be in a relationship, men that weren't faithful. You see, I'm not enough. And so when we have a belief about ourselves, it kind of becomes our identity. And then we seek experiences in order to reinforce the identity that we hold, so that we can actually feel a sense of safety in a certain way, and security and comfort, because now I at least know I'm not enough, and I know what that means to be not enough. See, it's true.
we can always
Uh,
prove it, is
yeah,
the
so
thing.
we
You can
unconsciously
prove whatever belief you
are
have.
seeking to prove this belief that I'm not enough, and so we have to be willing to question the belief. But questioning the beliefs that we hold on to very tightly end up becoming an identity. An identity is what we term as ego. Ego is identity, the beliefs that we identify as and hold on to so tightly. And the ego's job is to keep you safe and to reinforce your existence, to reinforce your identity, your existence. So to question the belief, I'm not enough, to question that and to let that go for the ego is actually scary, because if I let go of the belief that I'm not enough, then who the hell am I going to be? Because I know myself is not enough. And if I actually let it go, even though I need to let it go, who will I be if I'm not enough? I know who I am, or who I think I am, and I know what I think will happen what's gonna happen is I'm gonna attract these shitty relationships and people that don't commit to me and people that don't treat me well. But at least it's manageable and it's safe because I know the realm of experience I'm going to have. And so this is why, in a strange way, we kind of hold on, because at least I know what this is, but I don't know what might happen if I fall in love. I don't know what might happen if I let this belief go. Who will I be without this belief? And so we have to kind of be willing to question the belief. And so I asked my client, the fact that your mother left you, could it have meant something else? And we see the challenge is we don't challenge ourselves. Of course, it could have meant she was crazy. It could have meant she loved you so much that she believed you'd be better off with your father. It could have meant so many other things, but we make it mean I'm not enough. So we have to be willing to question the belief, but we tend not to question our beliefs because the ego wants to reinforce its identity. So that's number one. We have to question, is this true? Can I know this belief for sure? How do I know this belief to be true? Based on what? Is it fact? Is it fact? Is it fiction? When you say to someone, I'm not enough, and they're like, it's true. Why is it true? Because John left me, Susie left me, this person did this person, it's fact. Is it fact? What? So when I ask people, can you show me I'm not enough? Here's an iPhone. Here's a pen. This is fact. Yeah. Show me I'm not enough. I want to see it. Show it to me. You cannot show me I'm not enough because it's a concept. It's an idea. So we have to challenge the beliefs. That's number one. The other reason why some of those beliefs are sometimes very difficult to change or let go of, I should say, because it's actually a form of control. Holding on to the belief is a form of control. What do I mean by that? Here's the thing. When mom and dad do or don't do something, we make it mean I'm unworthy and I'm not enough. We make it about ourselves. This is a form of control because we mistakenly think, well, if it's my fault, like I'm not enough, if I'm the one that's not enough, then I have some control because then I can change myself, heal myself. Maybe I can get Botox. Maybe I can change my eyes. Maybe I can lose weight. Maybe I can make more money. Maybe I can get different socks. Maybe I can wear different underwear. Maybe I can get a different car. Maybe I can get a bigger house. Maybe I can, get a better job. And then I will be enough. Exactly. So we have this mistaken, illusory sense of control because if it's about me, then maybe I can change me to become enough. And then the game of constantly changing ourselves never ends, right? Rather than we have to be willing to come to the place of realizing, which can lead to some grief, of realizing, wait a second, it wasn't about me. It was just my mom or my dad or whoever, they were not capable. But when you acknowledge the truth, which is they were not capable, you're not in control of them, right? And so it can lead to a sense of feeling a bit out of control of us because then it's not about you, it's about they weren't capable. And that can feel a bit scary at first to let go. Yeah. But I think we have to be willing to face the sobering reality often that those that loved us, those that were our caregivers, they were limited and they were not capable. My father wasn't capable. My mother wasn't capable. My grandmother they weren't capable based on who they were and their level of consciousness in that particular moment. When you really accept that, you free yourself of the I'm not enough pattern, idea, and never ending chase for value and validation in the world, in external things. When you start facing the truth, which you may have to grieve and let go of, but you start realizing it was never about you. And I think that's where the freedom happens.
Absolutely. Okay, I say this in just about every one of my podcast episodes because this is my favorite quote of all time, hands down, but I have to tell it to you because it is just so relevant right now. My favorite quote comes from Frozen, the kids movie, and it is people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed, and it's in the song in Frozen. And it's like people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. They don't make them because of you. It's not because of you, it's because they had their own crap they were
Yeah.
dealing with. It had
Yeah.
nothing to do with you. It was because their own internal struggles.
Yeah. Their
And
own
we,
belief systems, you know.
yeah,
I always say that, look, if you believed what they believed, and you can fill in the blank, my mom, your dad, the person that hurt you, the ex, if you believed what they believed, you would do and have acted how they acted. But you might say, "Oh hell no, I would never do that." Yeah, because you don't believe what they believe,
and you don't
right?
know
But
life.
if you believe what they believed about themselves and life, you would do what they did. And
And if
so,
you
in a
were in the
certain
pain that they were
yes,
in,
in a certain sense, this is why I say, and it might sound strange, everybody's innocent because when you believe, if they believe what they believe, and they believe that to be true, they can't help themselves. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean there's no consequences. It doesn't mean there shouldn't be action taken. Doesn't mean you have to be friends with them or be in relationship with them. But it just means when someone is so stuck in an identity of beliefs, they can't help it. You know, a monkey can't help be a monkey, and a cat can't help meow. And so when they believe what they believe and believe it to be true, those beliefs determine their actions, so they can't help themselves. So in that sense, they're innocent. And so when we understand, oh, they're innocent, that doesn't mean they may not have to go to court. That doesn't mean they may not have to be held accountable. That doesn't mean you may not need to break up. That doesn't mean you don't set boundaries. It just means at the core essence level, they're innocent. And when you understand that, it frees you up to forgive them. It frees you up to let them go. It frees you up to realize it's not personal. It now, sadly, it affected you, and their beliefs got played out towards you, but it wasn't necessarily because of you. It was because they believed some shitty things or limiting things about themselves, about life, about a particular group of people that was projected towards you. And so
well,
I think when we realize that, it really changes our relationship with so much of life, and how we relate to people.
and that's the key to forgiveness, right there, all wrapped up. And it's from my experience. I have three kids with special needs, and one of mine is severely autistic and kind of semi-verbal, and he's 12, and he does all sorts of things. All sorts of things. He loves to gets upset and he kicks things, and he just last week he punched a window and shattered it,
Wow.
and he does all sorts of things, and he hurts his brother sometimes, and it's like I'm trying to explain that like he's innocent.
Yeah.
He literally
Yeah.
doesn't understand.
Doesn't
And if we could
understand.
view everybody that we interact with from that same kind of lens of like they don't see how they are affecting other people because they are
From their
so,
beliefs, yes, from the lens of their belief system. And it
yeah,
doesn't mean we should take it.
yeah,
It doesn't mean we
exactly.
shouldn't choose. It doesn't mean we shouldn't, you know, set our boundaries. It
Protect
doesn't mean we
yourself.
even need to protect ourselves, or it doesn't mean we need to be in relationship with them.
Yep.
But when you can shift your relationship with them inside of yourself, it creates a different way of relating. It creates more space. It creates more freedom. That's what we're talking about.
It's an internal shift of like
Yes.
you don't have to take offense. You also protect yourself in every way that you need to. Absolutely. But there's an emotional pain that can maybe be distance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be so emotionally hurt, and you
Mm-hmm.
can take the steps that you need to take to
Mm-hmm.
I definitely block my son's kicks when he's on
Mm-hmm.
a rampage. Like we do the things we need to do, and we're constantly trying to teach him how to control his body better and how to be a better human. That is a never ending battle of like trying to teach
Mm-hmm.
him how to be better, right? But it's at the same time it's like we're not sitting here blaming him and
Sure.
calling him bad names because that's unhelpful.
Yeah.
So if we have a minute, I'd love to dive into the part of your story where you moved countries, where you changed everything about your life after you had just broken everything off with your father. You kind of lost your family. You had this miraculous thing with the green card where you won it, and it's like life changing, right? And it's I have this thing I love to say where there's miracles in every trial, and or there's blessings in every trial, and there's trials in every blessing. And that was one where you had this huge blessing of getting this green card, and yet you also at the same time were losing your family, losing your home country, moving across the world. Can you talk to us about what that was like, how scary it was and exciting
Um,
and
when I came to the US with two suitcases, I was an 18, 19-year-old kid. So in certain ways, I think back now and I see 18, 19-year-old kids, and I'm like, oh my God, shit. I
for
was like,
baby?
the hell, these kids would get eaten alive, And so
I got married at 18, so
wow, so you're ahead of the curve, right? And so I think in many ways I was innocent and I wasn't thinking. And I think that was a blessing, and maybe ignorance was bliss because I didn't know, and maybe if I knew I wouldn't have followed and taken the leap because I was so young and I literally knew nothing about anything, and there was no internet and there was nothing to research. I just showed up. I won my green card and I just showed up and followed my soul. And honestly, it was just a grand adventure that I wasn't thinking about, but it was challenging. There were many times I didn't know how I was going to eat every day. There were many moments I wondered how the hell I was going to survive and pay my rent. And I just had to steal food from the supermarkets and scrounge food off of people on the street. And sometimes I was kind of homeless and had to sleep on friends' couches. So there were many moments that I literally had no clue how I was going to survive. But something propelled me, and something kept me going in the knowing that I was on the right path. And
powerful things
and
knowing.
I felt I felt the peace of knowing I was on the right path and following my soul, which felt better than being in a cage following and living someone else's life, even though it may have been more cozy and comfortable and what have you. And so I felt deep inside that I was on the right path. And that gave me uh, a peace inside. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. There were many moments when I first came to the US. The first week I wanted to give up and turn back because I arrived. This is pre-internet. I arrived and I asked the shuttle bus to take me somewhere safe and cheap where I could stay. And they took me to Venice Beach and dropped me off in Venice Beach. 20 years ago, Venice Beach wasn't the friendliest, wasn't the hippest place. And
It was warm, right?
it was full of craziness, let's put it that way. And I
It
sat
was
on
not
the
far from Venice Beach 20 years ago.
I sat on the beach uh, for a few days crying, wondering what the hell I was doing. And I remember calling
Beautiful
my
there though.
mother. I remember calling my mother. It's beautiful now, but it wasn't the best then because it was full of homeless and drug addicts, and it was not the great place to be. And I remember calling my mother, crying, and my mother, who I love very much, she's the one that said, keep going. I thought she was going to say, come home, but she's the one that said, keep going, keep going. And to be honest, I was her only son. So it took a lot for her, I'm sure, to say, keep going rather than come home. And so,
Beautiful.
sometimes people think that when you find your purpose, life gets easy. When you find your purpose, everything
Falls
sort
into
of
place.
the unicorns come out and the violins play. But I think sometimes when you find your purpose, the real challenges begin. When you find your purpose, the real difficulties begin. To me, these are soul tests that you have to go through in order to go through, because these soul tests are life experiences that prepare you, life experiences that make you develop the mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual muscle, the life experiences that make you tap into a part of yourself that you're not in touch with right now, to bring that out so that you can develop the soul force that prepares you to live your purpose in life. And so many times people think that they're on the wrong track when these challenges happen. But I want people to know that when you follow your purpose and you face the challenges, this is often a sign that you're on the right track. that you're closer than you think, not to give up, and many of I went through many dark moments in the beginning stages, especially. And what I found is the darkness and the dark moments, you talk about sunshine, but I'm going to talk about darkness for a moment. The darkness and the dark moments of life, when you look out at life and you can't see your heads from your tails, you can't see where you're going. It doesn't seem like there's much hope, where nothing seems to be working and you feel like giving up. I'm going to tell people that you're closer than you think. It's in the darkness that gestation is happening. A child is in the darkness in its mother's womb for 38, 40, 42 weeks, depending. In the darkness is growing, is building. So when you're in the darkness, to me, the darkness is a gift. The darkness is a blessing, because when you look out at your life and all you see is darkness and you feel a bit hopeless, don't lose hope. The darkness is pushing you, at least I found for me, the darkness pushes you to look inside. Because when you look out at your life, there's no light. When life is great, there's so much light and things flashing around and distractions. But when all seems dark, the darkness forces you to look inside your soul, inside your heart, inside your spirit, to connect with the divine, to connect with God, to connect with your essence, to connect with your soul, to connect with your truth, to connect with a deeper dimension of you that is infinite, that is powerful, that is light, to connect with your own light, to see your own light in the darkness, because that is the only guide that will guide you through those dark moments, the shine of your own soul, the shine of your own heart. It forces you to connect to your own light. And so for me, the darkness is sent to reveal your own light and your own power, if you're willing to look inside. And so I would invite everyone, go inside, connect, listen, create the time for stillness. Create the time to listen. Create the time to connect to your soul. Create the time to listen to the voice of God. Create the time to listen to the impulse inside of you, because every moment, whether you see it or not, you are being guided. And when things don't go according to plan, and when things fall apart, and when things don't work out, it might seem like the worst thing in the moment for your ego, but often it's the best thing for your soul. It's just that you can't see and make sense of it in this particular moment, because from the lens of the ego is limited. The ego is only able to see a small sliver of the picture of life and the totality of what is unfolding in this particular moment in time. And sometimes life not working out and going according to plan is actually a blessing, is actually grace, is actually the love of the universe. And so I tell people, don't just thank God for the things that unfolded and the prayers that were answered. Thank God for the prayers that weren't answered, because it's only when you look back that you realize, wow, thank God that relationship didn't work out. Thank God. If everyone thinks about all those relationships where you met somebody and you're like, oh, I found my soulmate. Thank God, I want to marry this person. And you had dreams and visions, and then you broke up and you were so devastated and you thought life had abandoned you. And now 10 years later, 5 years later, you look back and go, thank God that thing didn't work out. That was crazy. You couldn't imagine, but you weren't able to see it at the time. It didn't make sense at the time. So I tell people, when things don't go according to plan, when things don't work out, don't collapse, don't contract, don't curse the universe, don't blame yourself. Instead, get curious, step back, don't judge, and be open and available. Get curious, because if you're willing to trust that the universe is always working for your highest good, then you can step back and say, okay, the universe is always working for my highest good. I just can't see it right now. I just don't understand it right now. But if you're open, then you're available to life showing you. You're available to life revealing to you. You're available to this intelligence of life unfolding and showing you the magic that is seeking to manifest in your life. And so it's only when you're curious and you're open that you allow life to lead you. And I think that's when the magic happens. So I say thank God for the prayers that weren't answered. And even if you don't know why, the why will often be revealed in due time.
That is one of my favorite messages of all time, that I will forever shout from the rooftops, and you don't even know why, but I'm going to tell you why. And it's because almost 5 years ago, almost to the day, my son Joshua, who I was telling about, who's severely autistic, he was completely and utterly nonverbal, 7 years old, and he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and he almost died. And he was completely nonverbal, and when he was diagnosed with diabetes, he started talking.
Did he go into ketoacidosis?
He
Like
did, and he
yeah.
almost died, and then he started talking. After his diagnosis,
Oh,
he started talking, and it brought him his voice. And this
wow.
most horrible thing that we could ever have imagined for our family brought us this crazy miracle that I love to talk about, because it just showed us what is possible, and just it's amazing. And so now, he never shuts up, and it's wild. It was quite a journey. But as we wrap up, I want to talk about your books. You have the most amazing books,
Hmm.
and I want to take a few minutes to talk about those. So tell us about your books.
Yeah, just in the short few moments we have, the book that I just recently, in the last year or so, launched is called The Magic of Surrender. And this was not the book I thought I was going to write. It was not the book I wanted to write, but it was the book that was seeking to be written. And so I had to surrender to the book that was seeking to be written. And when I did, that's when the magic happened. When I did, that's when the book flowed. Um, the book was initially inspired because my mother in 2016, end of 16, was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And it was very challenging. And I began to fly back and forth from LA to London, where she lived, to be with her in her chemo sessions. And I wanted her to get well. But about 7 months into the process, so what started out as the worst year of my life turned out to be the best year, because about 7 months into the process, the doctor said to us, look, there's nothing else that we can do for you. So get your affairs in order, because you're going to die. And I went to the car with my mother and I cried and I looked her in the eyes and I said, Mom, two questions. Are you afraid? And my mother, who was a little Japanese woman, said, no, I'm not afraid, because I know I'm not this body. This body is just a temporary vehicle for my soul. This body will die, but what I am will live forever, and I'll be with you, guiding you from the other side. And so I felt her strength that day, and it gave me a lot of strength. And I looked her in the eyes because I wanted to be a good son. And I said to her, look, we don't have long. What can I do for you? What do you need? What do you want? Where can I take you? And she looked me in the eyes and she said, there's nothing I need. There's nothing I want. All I want is what God wants for my life. In that moment, I realized who she was. I realized what she was saying. She wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was surrendered. She was free. She was open to the highest unfolding of her soul. And that's when I realized her freedom. That's when I realized her power. That's when I realized what she was living and demonstrating to me. And that's when I saw the power of surrender. And that's when I realized that I think surrender is the most powerful thing that we can do. Surrender is the key to the next level of our lives. Surrender is the real secret to manifestation. Surrender was the real key to all the great ones: Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Mandela, Martin Luther King, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali. All of these folks, at some point, they surrendered themselves to the universe, to God, to their soul, to their deeper purpose, to life that was calling them. And in their surrender, they transcended themselves. They transcended their human limitations, and they tapped into another dimension of life, another dimension of the universe, and life was able to manifest through them and use them in ways that they could not have imagined. And so I think in our culture, we have this misconception that surrender is weak, that surrender is passive, that surrender is giving up, that surrender is waving the white flag, that if you surrender, you're going to be left behind, you're going to be a doormat, you're going to be taken advantage of, you won't manifest your goals, dreams, or desires. And I'm actually saying, no, that's a misconception. If you really understand the real essence of surrender, what if you didn't get less, but you got more? More than you could have planned, more than you could have imagined, more than you could have intended with the limitation of your conscious mind. And so, yes, surrender is a letting go of control, or I should say the illusion that we're in control. Surrender is when you stop trying to force life to fit your limited idea of how you think it should be and who you think you should be and how you think life should unfold. It's when you're open and you take the limitations off of life, and you're open and you're available to receive. You're open and you're available to life showing you. And that's when, the old paradigm, which is the ego-based model of living life, is all about, what do I want? What do I want? And I say, like, you might get everything you thought you wanted, but we've all had the experience where you achieve what you thought you wanted, only to realize that what you thought you wanted was not what you really wanted. It was just what you thought you wanted based on who you thought you were. And so you might get what you thought you wanted, but it can be limited sometimes, And so for me, the real question is not just, what do I want? Because if we don't know who we are, then what we think we want is going to be limited too. The question becomes, what is it that life is seeking to express through me? What is it that the universe is seeking to express through me? What is God seeking to express through me? What is my soul seeking to manifest? And tuning into that, aligning ourselves with that intention, aligning ourselves with that vision, aligning ourselves with that inner impulse and calling. Then when we align with that, then we can bring our personality, our mind, our ego, our goal setting, our planning, our resources, our marketing to support the fulfillment of the pure intention of our soul. Then you can give 100% without attachment. And I think that is the essence of surrender.
Love it so much. Surrender is absolutely magical, and I'm telling everyone they have to go buy your book.
Thank you.
Amazing. So amazing. Tell us the name of your other book real quick.
The name of the other book is You.Are.The.One.
You.Are.The.One. I love it. And then your podcast is called Soul Talk.
Soul Talk.
Soul Talk. It's amazing. I've listened to some of it. It's awesome. So everyone needs to go check that out. And then what else should we go find you on?
Yeah, I would say, look, if you're listening and maybe if you're inspired by something you heard, if you feel ready for the next level of your life, if you feel ready to heal and get unstuck and release the blocks of conditioning that have prevented you from being fully who you are and sharing your gifts with the world, twice a year I do an event, a very special event. It's my most transformative work up until now. This December, it's a 12-day event called Boundless Bliss, the Bali Breakthrough Experience. It's 12 days in Bali, December the 5th through the 16th. It will change your life. I've done 21 of these events. This December is event number 22, and this will be the final Boundless Bliss Bali event I'm doing. And so if anyone is listening and you feel inspired, then you can go to www.boundlessblissbali.com. That's boundlessblissbali.com. You can go to the website, watch the video, you can apply, and we'll explore the possibilities. And so this December the 5th through the 16th, boundlessblissbali.com. And yes, Instagram, also find me there, Kute Blackson.
Awesome. That sounds absolutely incredible and life-changing. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
I would so appreciate your wisdom and your time. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I will let you run. Bye.